I'm back with another Chris Reeve Knives video. This one's going to focus on the difference between the large and small Sebenza. It's going to focus on the Sebenza 21 and Classic. You see most of the knives here in front of you are Sebenza 21s, with the exception of this guy, which is a Classic. Classic and the 21 are very, very similar, just a few minor differences between those two. And then we do have a small regular up here, thrown in there just because I have it, but those are not as common as the 21 is going to be. So it's mainly going to focus on the 21, small versus large. Just talk about the differences between those two, and then I'll also pull out some knives that may be a little bit more common in case you cannot handle a Sebenza where you are and are relying on the internet to order one. And show them next to some knives that may be a little more common so you can get an idea of how they compare to other knives size-wise. So first of all, we'll take a look at the large and the small Sebenza. So over here we have 3 large 21s. This is the closest that I have to a plain version of a large 21. This is the Wilson Combat Starbenza. And then we have, and this is with the standard drop point blade. We have a, go ahead and open this and show it, double studs on that one. And then the next one up here is a 21 large Insingo blade with micarta inlays. And then we have a large 21 up here with the Blade HQ exclusive carbon fiber inlays, drop point blade. Both of these inlaid models just have the single thumb stud. And then coming down the smalls, as I mentioned, we have a regular here. This is a limited edition regular, has the Tanto blade. Uh, 21, small 21 with wood inlays, drop point blade, polished blade. And then we have a couple of the plain titanium scaled models, one of them with the Insingo blade. This is a 2010 version without the Idaho made stamping on there. And then just your run-of-the-mill small drop point, plain handled. This is also a 2010 without the Idaho made on it. And then finally down here we've got the Classic that I mentioned. You can see it. It's got the Classic MM for year 2000 with the micarta inlays on it. So first of all, I have medium-sized hands. I find both the large and the small to be very comfortable, but they're very different knives. So let's take a look, or very different feels, let me say that, in my hand. So I wear medium-sized gloves. Let's see if we can get some different views of the large 21 there. It's very, very comfortable. It feels very natural in my hand. All different kinds of grips. Can't see my... For some reason, knives, a lot of knives feel very, very comfortable in this grip to me, and this, I would imagine, would be the least likely used grip for a knife. So there is the large, you can see in my hands, and we'll go with this guy to demonstrate the small. So as you can see, where the large had quite a bit sticking out the back there, the small pretty much disappears. I do have a full 4-finger grip on this though, which is nice, in a hammer style grip. If we go to kind of a saber style grip, the pinky starts to lose a little bit of traction back there, but it's still extremely comfortable. It's very comfortable in this kind of pinch style grip. Once again, it fits very nicely in this reverse grip, but I just I never find myself using that. So both knives fit comfortably in my hands. I feel like I have good control over them. As far as opening the knives, on the small, and I find this with any frame lock, smaller frame lock, I have to be very, very conscious of what I do with my fingers over here. When I first got my Sebenzas, I started off with a small like this one, and I found that I was often putting pressure on that lock bar, and you can definitely feel the difference when you go to open it. And this is not exclusive to Sebenzas. I've had that issue with other frame lock knives, especially smaller ones where there's just not much real estate over here to place your fingers. So as I mess with my Sebenzas, with my pointer finger, I try and locate that pivot screw, and then it's a lot easier to open them. Oops. Knocked over another little knife off the camera there. We'll get to that in a second. But yeah, so I use a pivot screw to locate that pointer finger. It keeps my finger from putting pressure on the lock bar right where that detent ball is and adding undue force, making the knife more difficult to open. So that's one difference. With the large, I never really noticed that issue with the large. Especially, well, I'll get to the thumb studs here in a second. So we'll go to this guy, which does not have double thumb studs. But I never have noticed that I put much pressure there with the large, so I don't have to worry about it. These always open smoothly for me. So just something to note with the small ones. I would imagine if you have larger hands, it's even more of an issue trying to get smaller frame locks open. It may or may not be an issue for you. I'm just telling you my experiences with them. Let's talk about the thumb studs for a second, double versus single. Most of my first Sebenzas were the single lugs. I am a firm believer that large or small, that it should have double lugs from the factory. Actually, my second Sebenza, I'm pretty sure this was my second Sebenza, this little Nsingo here. And you'll notice that it's got the dual thumb studs. And I immediately noticed that it's easier to open this one for me because instead of putting pressure here on this lock bar, I pinch the two thumb studs so it keeps that finger off of the lock bar. And it just makes it easier to open. It's not just for opening with your non-dominant. I'm right-handed, so my non-dominant hand. Yeah, that's nice. That's a nice feature, but I just find the double studs make opening the knife in general easier. And that's on both the large and the small. Now, as I said, on the large, it's not really, that second thumb stud really isn't an advantage for locating my finger and keeping it off the lock bar, but I do the same thing. I still pinch both of those thumb studs, excuse me. And I find it just makes a knife a little easier to open for me. And of course, your experience may vary with that. But I do think that the double thumb studs should be the factory default. That's just my opinion. I prefer mine with the double studs. And I'll be sending this guy in and this guy at least to get double thumb studs. And I may even send this one in to get it as well. So that's how I feel about the double thumb studs on the large and the small. Let's talk about the blade shapes. I like both blade shapes. And I can't really say that I have a preference for either one. I like both of them. I did find the large Nsingo blade, when I first got it, it was a little bit weird to me. I had to get used to that on the larger knife. I mean, really, this kind of looks like a folding kitchen knife. But I have used this knife quite a bit, just in day-to-day tasks, opening packages or cutting food and such. And I like the blade shape. It's really grown on me on this larger knife, and I enjoy both of them. The blade, I would say, feels a little bit thinner. I would say the drop point blade is thicker. At least it feels that way to me. And let's look at the tips here. See if we can get a straight up and down there. I would say the tip is thicker on this standard drop point. You've got this swedge up at the top here, and it just feels, this blade feels a little more delicate to me. Delicate may not be the right word. It's not fragile or anything by any means, but this one seems like it is a little bit thinner than the standard drop point blade to me. I really liked the Nsingo blade immediately on the small knife. I'd started off with one of the drop point blades, and the drop point blade, look how thick that thing is on such a small knife. This is actually a pretty beefy blade, and I like it. That tip is pretty thick, but I did immediately like the Insengo blade on the small one. I don't know why that is. It just seemed to fit and flow with this knife really well on this smaller size. But I did grow to appreciate it on the larger one as well. So I would say you'd be well served by either one of those blades, of those blade shapes. Just get whichever one you think will offer you better utility for what you do with your day-to-day tasks. So the next thing I'd like to talk about is inlay versus non-inlay. I prefer the way the inlays look. I think they look great. I especially like these micartas on the bead blasted finish. That's just, I mean, this is all going to be subjective, personal preference for that kind of stuff. I also like this polished look here that you see on the wood and carbon fiber inlaid models. I think the inlays look great on both, large and small. Functionally, I do not see a great difference between the plain handles and the inlaid handles. Visually, I prefer the inlays. Functionally, I just don't see that much of a difference. They do, both of them feel good. I mean, this one does kind of fill the hand a little bit better with the inlays, but it's not a great difference. And large or small, I would say go with whichever one appeals to you and your budget. I mean, as much as you're paying for these knives, adding the extra cost for the inlays probably isn't that big of a deal unless you're going with mammoth bone or something. But large or small, inlay or not, I don't see much of a functional difference. And I think a lot of the reason for that is that these knives they fit the hand so well. I think the handles are well designed on them, and so I don't really see where these inlays are adding a lot of traction or filling the hand a lot better, at least for my hand. Of course, that may vary on yours. I will say that this guy, to me, this pattern I have found to be really good. So this doesn't add any thickness to the handle, but it may offer just a little bit more traction than having just the plain smooth handle. And I found that to be really, I like that a lot. I enjoy this Sebenza quite a bit. I visually like the pattern, but I think that this may offer a little bit more traction than even the micarta inlays to me. And I think that this is a really good design, and I like it quite a bit. Lanyards, I'm not really a lanyard guy, and I have no preference for them really. I like the way they look. So like these knives, I haven't really carried. This one specifically, I just use for photographs when I take firearm photos or knife photos. It's just kind of one that I photograph. I don't really carry and use this one. But I have found on the ones, I carry this one a lot. So the ones that I carry and use quite often are this guy, and this guy. And you'll notice none of those have lanyards. I found, especially on the small, that it's not uncomfortable, but it felt kind of weird back there. And I preferred it without the lanyard after I finally took it off and gave that a try. Your hand seems to wrap around the back of that knife better to me, and it's just more comfortable to me. So for me, on the small, definitely if I'm going to carry it, I don't want a lanyard on there on the small. On the large, I took them off as well. I didn't see a great difference on the large because the back of that hand, or the back of the handle, I mean, it's way out here. So that lanyard, it's sticking way out here. It doesn't really have an effect on anything. But I took them off on the largest for now anyway. With the 21s, Sebenzas, these things are so easy to take apart and put back together. You know, if you ever want that lanyard back on there, it's really easy to get it on. One difference is too, you can take the lanyard itself off on the small, and the pin will still stay in there. as you can see on both of these. You can see the pin still in there and in here, because there's a little step on the lanyard pin that keeps it inside of the handle. The larges do not have that. It's all the same diameter, and if you take the lanyard out, the pin will just slide out. There's nothing holding it in there. I've seen where some people have taken a piece of 550 cord and just kind of burnt the ends flush with the lanyard pin, so then that holds it in. I didn't really care that much though. So lanyards, definitely I don't want them on the small if I'm going to carry it. On the large, I took them off, but I didn't really see a huge difference between the two of those. So those are my feelings on the lanyards. Now, let's talk about how I actually carry these knives. You will notice on these ones that I said I carry, this one actually has seen some use by me as well. You'll notice that none of these have a pocket clip on them. I've also taken, I haven't not carried this one, but this one also I took it off. I have found that I greatly prefer the large and the small without the pocket clip on there. They feel a lot better in my hand. Both sizes do without the pocket clip. So I take the pocket clips off of them definitely if I'm going to carry them. I do like having the pocket clip insert in there. I'm just waiting for some more to get back in stock for these larges, and I will be getting the pocket clip inserts for those. So definitely I prefer not to have the pocket clips on them if I'm going to carry and use them. They're just more comfortable to me. So then that may beg the question, well, how exactly do you carry these knives?